My name is Dana Ware, and I'm the creative director at Dark Slope Studios. And I get the pleasure of speaking with you today about our sixth sense of proprioception, haptics, and presence. So, a little bit about myself. I'm a VR AR specialist with an emphasis in location based and at home entertainment. I'm originally from Los Angeles and have an undergrad degree from UCLA and two master's degrees from the University of Utah, one in game development and the other in film and new media. Now, living in LA, you get many opportunities to work in film. So I have about 10 years of experience in film, television, and commercials. But I didn't fall in love with immersive technology until I really started to understand, study, and create interactive pieces for museums and video games. Now, a lot of my experience and knowledge of stage and sensory development comes from my past experience of working at The Void, one of the founding companies of LBE VR Entertainment. So, a lot of us grow up talking and hearing about our five different senses of taste, touch, smell, hearing, and sight. But we don't really talk much about our sixth sense of proprioception, our ability to perceive the touch, angle, and movement of our body within a space. Our sensory cells really allow us to interpret different sensations through our body. They allow us to understand the touch, the feel, and how our body moves through motion, but also has resistance to objects. And the feedback our body's skin gets through these receptors actually helps our brain to interpret the information that it's receiving in order to make sense of these interactions that we're taking part of. So the question then becomes, what does this have to do with VR? Well, there are different methods that us as creators and developers of VR can use in order to trigger these sensory cells, such as haptics. Haptics comes from the Greek word haptikos, meaning able to come into contact. And in VR, we use haptic devices to activate these sensations in our players' sensory cells. And in VR, or LBE VR specifically, we use haptics and a mixture of tactile sensations and proprioception in the pursuit of creating full immersion. However, in order to achieve full immersion, we need to understand how we establish presence within a space as well. Now, there are two basic types of presence: cognitive and perceptive presence. Each has its importance when creating immersion and the illusion of reality for a player. Our ability to create cognitive presence has only increased over time in virtual reality with the creation of hardware and software that really allows us to have lifelike graphics, really tricking our mind into believing that what we are seeing is real. Now, one example of this is Unreal has metahumans. Not only is in an attempt to make lifelike avatars and NPCs, but it's also a software that's very accessible for game developers to learn and to work with. Now, when I was previously working at The Void, we loved to play with these cognitive and perceptive presence. We would toss people into the jungles of Jumanji and watch as they screamed their way across the wooden planks, trying to get across safely and clustering together, pushing their bravest friend to the front of the group. Now, in order to achieve perceived presence, we can use sensory effects to promote immersion within these virtual spaces. The use of sensory effects can include heat, wind, water, taste, smell, textures, floors or seats that can simulate an acceleration or a torque that can be used to create a perceived presence, tricking the brain into thinking that the body's actually moving. We can also use other methods such as wearables, including vests, gloves, and props. And it actually has been shown that the tactile stimulation can affect a user's sense of embodiment within VR and virtual spaces. So, if done correctly, all of these sensory effects can work together to give off a haptic feedback that allows our sixth sense to connect the virtual with the physical, adding to our perceived presence. Now, working at the Void, we were able to see how people would actually feel like they could feel the heat of the lava and smell the fire of Mustafar in Star Wars Secrets of the Empire. And this really convinced the players into thinking that they were above this life-threatening fiery lava. And some of my current work at Dark Slope Studios, specifically in LBEVR, involves the use of a simulator that aids in the perception of presence, as the player is not only giving the visuals of moving through a fast-paced environment, but also the feel of speed, rumble, and wind as they accelerate through an environment. Our perceived proprioception in space and physical simulator allows us to pull the player further into believing that they are actually in this virtual experience. However, if done incorrectly, the opposite actually occurs, pulling the user out of the experience and potentially triggering our vestibular reactionary defense, causing nausea, headaches, and disorientation. Some of the early creators of VR experience really struggled to find this connection, creating a ton of bad VR that really made people sick and turned them off from the medium altogether. But just like most things, when we design, we really need to create human-centered experiences, focusing on heuristics, behavior, and mapping in order to promote optimal user experiences, examining the user's real-world interaction and how that relates back to the new world of hyperreality. People bring their own understanding, their own pool of knowledge of how things should work in the environment. And so if we don't match that within the virtual space, it becomes really disorienting. So we need to understand that every time that there is a lack of sensory feedback or a mismatch in this real life interaction mapping, it's only going to lead to the user frustration and pull them out of the illusion of reality that we as creators are so desperately trying to achieve. Knowing what we know today, it's important for us to use the skills that we have to push the medium forward by creating experiences that support and empower the user. Understanding that we are not just creating opportunities for cognitive presence, but striving to create opportunities for perceptive presence as well. So, looking towards the future, I'm excited to see how we can continue in our efforts to stimulate our sensory system, possibly using deep brain stimulation and neural interfacing. The future of VR, immersion, and presence will require us to better understand and use our sixth sense. Thank you so much for your time today. Please reach out to me at LinkedIn or on Twitter if you'd like to continue this conversation or have any questions about some of the things we've talked about. Thank you so much and take care.